to thank every one of you who blessed me yesterday. You had me blushing. That was the second kick I've ever caught for a birthday. I think we did one together here about 7 years ago or something. And then my 50th birthday, my children just plotted behind me. I was holding the meeting and I came back home and I saw my house was filled with people. So they got me, and I got one yesterday. That's a couple of years after that. Thank you so much. Then I want to thank Mama Jevnik. Is she around? Okay. Well, this woman is very special. The day I was to come in, our flight was cancelled on Friday. I already dressed up to come straight to church because once it's afternoon flight, I know there's nothing you can do. It's going to be delayed. So I dressed up to be in church direct from the airport. Now, Pastor Linus was working the phones till late in the night. Pastor Ade was texting, can you go to Lagos, and all those kind of things. Then finally we got Dana Air. The plan was to go with Arik so that I would be here earlier. Eventually we got Arik, which now took off after 3. And we got here. Dana, please. Dana. Yeah, so we got it. And as soon as I entered, she saw me and said, how are you, sir? And immediately she was in the premium seat and I was in let my people go. The same plane. And she just gave me a big hug and went straight to the hostess and said, upgrade him to this seat right now. And they said, oh no, we cannot do that. Out there, you just can do that on your app. You are in the plane and you can decide to upgrade yourself on the app and then, But no, they said, no. She has to go to the counter. Now the plane had delayed for over an hour, 15 minutes. There's no way to go to counter to upgrade. So she said, sir, sit on my seat. And she went to the back to sit on my own seat and gave me her seat. So as soon as I was landing, actually while we were taxiing, I think on our landing, while we were taxiing, I called Pastor, I said, just get in touch. Or was it in Abuja I called him? Yeah, right in Abuja I called him and said, this woman has done it again. Just call her and say thank you on my behalf. The Lord will honor you and you will reap the reward in your health, in longevity, in your children's children. Thank you. Mommy was asking me to send her a gift. Now, I will do that after now. But I feel in my spirit like, tidying up what we started yesterday. Whenever you're running a program, you should have a predetermined concept of what you want to achieve at the end. In my heart, when Pastor discussed with me about this program, my goal was to change the way we think. I said something to us yesterday, which is mindset. It comes from, formation of concrete. If you do not determine what you want to do with your concrete, the trouble you're going to have is that once you pour the concrete and it's set, it becomes useless. And before you set your mind on something, and unfortunately, in church we lack what I call critical thinking. In critical thinking, you have developmental thinking, you have futuristic thinking, and some other kind of thing. Developmental thinking allows you to look beyond where you are and then begin to see how can I expand what I have. That's why I love this rule you just mentioned now, proportional engagement. If you do not engage to a certain degree, then you don't get the result that comes with it. And therefore, in church, we are not engaging enough. If the master says, occupy till I come, I don't know why you then reverse the order to say, spend all your life preparing till he comes. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? If you make all your effort just preparing for rapture, you are working against the simple instruction he gave. Occupy till I come. He didn't say prepare for my coming. Just get occupied. And I hear children of God, I don't want to miss rapture. I don't want to miss heaven. I don't understand how you can be a child of God and be worried about your missing your home country. Because I guarantee you, any American citizen or British citizen is not afraid of missing out in going back to Britain. All you need to do is to take your passport and go to. In fact, you don't even need visa to go back home. It's your passport. So if you're already a child of God, going to heaven is guaranteed. You are his child and you hang in there and you are with him. You are in him. He says, while you are waiting for my coming, occupy. That's the instruction. In Matthew chapter 28, I'm going to be doing two things together, and I'm going to be a little faster than I usually will be. Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 to 20. Go then, I'm reading from Amplified here. Go then and make, Amplified Classic, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you all the days, perpetually, uniformly, and on every occasion, to the very close and consummation of the age. Amen. So let it be. I want to submit to you that the Great Commission is clearly defined here as going to make disciples, and not just making disciples of church members. It talks about making disciples of what? Nations. So this should introduce a shift in your paradigm. There should be that paradigm shift, that whilst we focus on the church, God's idea is to focus out there in the world. And if you get to the book of Revelation, there was a loud announcement after the trumpet was blown, and it says, the kingdom of this world, the kingdoms of this world has become the kingdom of our God and of his Christ. It then means that before you have a chance to escape from this place, there is a spiritual technology that we can engage that can change the atmosphere of this world into the atmosphere of the kingdom. When he taught us to pray, gave that pattern of prayer, what he said was, when you pray, say, your will be done on earth as it is already done in heaven. In other words, God's idea is to take what is already settled in heaven and make it a reality on earth. But now we have become so heavenly conscious that we forgot that we are resident on earth. And so we are no longer influencing that earth. I stopped in number 40 yesterday. Let me give you number 15. Kingdom citizens believe the gospel to economically lift the whole communities of nations where they live in. Because they know now they are pastors of communities. And so they believe for God to lift the entire community out of poverty and transform that by reasons of kingdom principles. Whereas church mindset teaches us that you should just teach the members to prosper so they could bring him on tithes and offering for our projects. Now there's a major difference, because if your goal, you see, money is a reward for problem solved. People don't part with their money. There are three ways to make money. You either inherit it, or you render goods, or you offer services. Those are the ways we make money. And people will be willing to reward the one who solves problem. I listened to one of the richest men in Britain. He said something. He said, I went into airline not because I knew there was money there. I just wanted to solve problem. And then he said, don't tell me that. He said, no, I've flown on almost all the airlines I knew in the world, and I wrote down in my diary things that they could have offered to make it more comfortable. And none of them was offering that. So I decided to just buy 2 planes and say, let me offer what I expect from other airlines. He said, so I was shocked when I began to make money. I just wanted to give people the comfort I thought they deserved. Do you understand what I'm saying? That we need to go beyond just empowering church people and knowing how to change an entire community. You know, I was talking to a church. The road to the church was bad. The drainages were all blocked. And I said, are you waiting for government to do anything about it? Yeah. What are you doing with all your youths? So challenge them, and the pastor now took all the people, took his youth, and then came into the. As soon as he came out to clean up the place, the entire community came out, and they filled up the entire place, fixed the road, and cleaned the drainage. Everything in less than 2 hours. So your community is looking for leaders that can introduce them to how to change their deplorable condition. I hope you know the Toyota we all drive. Toyota, there's a village, there's a whole town called Toyota, built after that name. Nokia is the name of where that product, that Nokia phone, was invented. People who just decided that I am going to transform my community. It's called community transformation. Maybe some other day we will talk about that. Community transformation requires that you look beyond your immediate environment and see the possibility of changing the entire community by introducing ideas, marketing strategies, certain things that will benefit the community, and by default they resort to you. They will all come back to you. Number 16, kingdom leaders equip people for the life outside the church and fellowship of brethren. They understand that the mission of the church is to replicate heaven on earth. Why church leaders equip people for just church life and living and preparing for the rapture. Now, someone told me recently, they sent an article to me, 35 things you need to know about the rapture. And I told the pastor who forwarded this, I think it was a pastor's meeting, I said, do you realize that 37 years ago, we were forwarding, we didn't have phone to forward those, but we were circulating tracts about 37 things about rapture. And 37 years after, there is no upgrade, there's no new understanding, there's no new revelation, there's no expansion, there's nothing, there's no rule of engagement, there's nothing. You circulated the same thing. And you've done that for 37 years and you're still doing, behold, he comes quickly. If after 2,000 years, he hasn't come quickly, then quickly does not mean what we saw quickly mean. It means something else that you don't understand. And if you thought quickly means 2,000 years after and he hasn't arrived, then it's your job to have engaged. I pastored some people in 1987. We had a retreat and we were coming back from the retreat, the Easter retreat or something. The last message was, behold, he comes quickly. And we got back home. It was time for famine. The wife was telling the husband, let's go do famine. He said, behold. So then it's time to go to do some work, and the children's school fees, and the woman is saying, then let the children be in school. If he comes quickly, then he takes them from the school. So anyway, The quickly was not quickly. It was time now to harvest. So the woman came to me. I said, please, will you talk to my husband? And I said, what's the... He said, brother, don't worry. Behold, he comes quickly. When it was time to pay school fees, it was time to harvest. He has not arrived quickly. And they were hungry. And they are coming to me now. Hey, what are we going to do? I said, he's coming quickly. Just wait. If you thought rapture was going to be as quickly as you planned or you were expecting, why has it not happened for 40 years you have been preaching it? Imagine what we could have achieved if we had applied ourselves to this simple instruction, occupy till I come. Imagine. We were preparing people to escape the troubles of this world instead of preparing them to serve people, to transform our communities. I was sharing with Reverend yesterday, Dr. Akpame, Mike Akpame of Christ Teaching Center, Christian Teaching Center in Zaria, had made so much impact that every year they have this medical outreach right in the Emir's Palace in Zaria. So that every time he has his annual convention, the Emir of Zaria, of Zauzau is called, who he also rules over Kaduna and all that, sends a delegation of all his top aides to attend the conference of this man of God on his behalf. Because whenever they're going to do their medical outreach, they do it in the Emir's Palace. He has 3 days, 4 days doing free medical outreach, caring for the people, and he has become such a principality. You know, we have our own principalities, sir. We always ascribe everything to the devil. We have our own principalities. And I shared something with him. The headquarters of Nigerian church has not always been in Lagos. There was a time that our headquarters was in Elisha. And every who is who you know in this country was traveling to see Pa Elton and taking instruction there. Then later our headquarters moved to Benin. When Benin spoke, the government of Nigeria knew the Christians have spoken. So the headquarters of Rivers State might just be located here where we are. That you literally begin to dispense of God's plan, begin to dispense of his program, begin to change people's paradigm, begins to change how people see. And once you begin, other churches begin to see that. You know, we shared this, and Pastor Esther in Jos just had this idea. She will just take all the youths and all that. They go to clean the street, they go to sweep, they go to clean the drainages, and they were doing that consistently. And then when people come, they say, who are these people? And all that. They give them some uniform, and when they come, they will share tracts with them. That was how people were coming to their church. Say, any church that can touch our lives, we want to go there. I have a friend, you know, who had, you know, some money and dug a borehole in his church compound, and then called all the neighbors and said, there's water here for all of you. You can come in any day. If there's no light, I will on the generator. But now, the pastor became the local government chairman in that area. Every time they say, let's go and see pastor first. If anybody was having quarrel with a wife, they are not members of his church, and they say, I'm going to tell pastor, the man will just behave. That's how to pastor communities. People around there, in fact, if anything was going to happen and all that, they just call him. They say, Pastor, we're thinking that if he tells them, calm down, don't do this, they listen to him because he gave them water to drink. Number 17. Kingdom leaders honor Jesus, or honor Jesus' dual role as Redeemer and Creator. This is what I want to correct in our minds. Jesus is not just a Redeemer. The Bible says, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was what? Come on, talk to me. The Word was, and the Word was what? All things were made by Him. Without Him, all things were made by Him. Without Him was not anything made that was. And they were told that He is upholding all things by the power of His Word. So the Word was at the center of creation and all that. Now He becomes our Redeemer. Why do we limit His role to that of a Redeemer and not that of a Creator? So it takes kingdom mindset to understand that these same people that are not yet saved are part of his creation, and he rules over them. He's called governor among the nations. And if he's the governor among nations, then you need to understand that there is certain level of territorial authority you even have over those people. Let me tell you this little secret. You see, unbelievers, there's nothing you do to them that won't work. If you do juju, it will catch them. If you also pray, it will catch them. It all depends on how you know how to use authority. It was John G. Lake, who was in Spokane. No, he was in South Africa and all that, but he was in Spokane, Washington, when the bubonic plague hit America. People were dying in their hundreds. And then he just went to the boundary of Spokane, Washington. And he said, the Bible says, no evil shall come near my dwelling. I live in this city, and every other person who lives here is under my coverage. Nobody is going to die as a result of this. He made that famous announcement, and Spokane, Washington recorded the least death in that plague. He went and closed hospitals. He sent his boys. They closed down hospitals because they said, go and heal the people. I shared that with you. You were not healed by the death of Christ. You were healed by his stripe. The stripe was laid on him before he went to the cross, which means that before the blood that redeemed us was shed, he already healed the people. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I want you to read all the places where people were healed. When he healed the other man, and the man said, well, how dare you take your bed? How dare you walk on the Sabbath? They said, well, I don't know anything. Somebody just came to me, told me to. And after the testimony, they drove him away from the synagogue. He said, I could care less. And Jesus found him and said, do you believe on the Son of God? He said, who is he? Now he received miracle, he didn't even know the Son of God. He said, I that speak to you, I am he. I believe. Instantly. Miracles are not for believers. I know we say it's children's bread. See, you need to know, you need to read the Bible in context. Because once you remove text out of it, becomes corn. To avoid being a con man, you need to put it in context. Those words are together. You understand? He was speaking at a time to a woman who was a Gentile, and he has not yet sacrificed himself for all. But after the cross, there was nobody who couldn't access healing. Do you understand what I'm saying? By his stripe, that stripe was put on him before the cross. You know, I was sharing with Pastor something that happened to Benny Hinn. He went to India, and the people delayed him. The immigration, they didn't let him go. They said, you're coming to practice healing, we won't allow you. And when he had to agree with them that he won't make altar call. And Benny Hinn will always preach first, lead people to Christ before he prays for the sick. But this time they say, you must not do that. So he found himself operating differently. That is how he also came to this understanding. So he went there. In fact, they said he must not use crusade. He must not use Jesus crusade. You know, he used to call it Jesus crusader. He must not use Jesus. He must not. So there's a festival that the Indians used to celebrate. They call it Festival of Light. So he now did his poster and called it Celebration of the Festival of Light. Jesus is the Son of Righteousness. He is the light of the world. Do you understand what I'm saying? So he used that, and thousands of people came. So he preached to them, and then he could not make altar call. That was what he agreed to before they allowed him in. So he preached for them, and then later prayed. If you are sick, he just prayed. All of a sudden, a woman ran with a child, a 10-year-old child. This child was crippled. It was shown in his documentary. The child crippled, and everybody, the family members came along. The child was now was running through the platform. And then the woman came, took over the microphone, and told the people, he said, all of you look at my family. You knew how this child was. You knew this is what happened. When this man prayed, my child suddenly became normal. Can you show me who gave you the power? I want to follow that man. And the woman now asked, how many of you will follow the man that healed my child? How many of you want to follow the man that healed this child? How many of you, the people were coming out now? They say he shouldn't make altar call. The woman made altar call. What is it? Number 18. Kingdom mindset realizes that Jesus, who died on the cross in John 3:16 for the sins of the world, John 1:29, is the same Jesus who created the world. And so we apply the word of God to the culture that we live in, so that same Jesus who saved us, he is the same one that created them. And if they bring in the culture that, I hear a lot of argument about, how Christianity embraced Easter and Christmas, they were pagan holidays and all that is okay. I understand. But is it possible that we contextualize certain things? Is it possible that you bring certain things to a certain place and you don't split hair over that if that is going to bring the result you desire? Because sometimes we are so religious about the way we approach certain things that God cannot even recognize what we are doing. Church people only believe that we preach Christ, his cross only to save sinners. But we do not understand. The first day I was sharing with you how that he has reconciled all things to himself, even inanimate objects, even the animal kingdom had been reconciled to God. And in God's mind, the Bible is saying that when creation comes in, I'm telling you, you will lay hand on a cock, and some houses that have been under lock and key, high gate, you will lay hands on them and let it go. They will fly inside, and by the croaking of that cock, the person living in there will hear the gospel. I don't have enough time because I still want to go to the second part of this. But do you realize that even natural objects, natural creation, nature was engaged in warfare in the entire Bible? Deborah began to say something in chapter 5. He says, the causes, he said the stars fought in their causes against Sisera and his army. And then you wonder where did the stars engage in any warfare? They fought in their causes. You need to come to the New Testament to see what she was trying to say. Because then, when Jesus was born, we saw this star that appeared. And the star guided the wise men to where he was. So it was the star that guided Sisera to the house of jail where he was killed. Joshua engaged the sun and the moon. Moses engaged the rod and the rock. And therefore, if that was admissible in the Old Testament, when creation now begins to get manifested, because when the sons of God begin to manifest, and we address ourselves to creation, the simple thing you will see is that even we can use, look at the way Jesus did it. Whoever saves his money in the mouth of a fish. Talk to me. Whoever plans a 3-day program without thinking of feeding. And at the last minute, he said, give me what you have. The Bible says he took and blessed that. That word is an ablepo. He looked again. In other words, when he gave a second look, he had already seen it multiply in the hands of the disciples. Beginning to look beyond this is starting our journeys, looking beyond the immediate environment, our church environment, is the introduction to the ministry Jesus really came for. Jesus says, we are the light of the world. Where does the light shine the brightest? Among other lights, it's in the dark. And you cannot stay in church and hope you will shine the brightest. Okay, number 19. Kingdom mindset applies their faith to the earth as they enforce the rule of Christ. They understand that unless Bible principles are applied here, the kingdoms of this world cannot become the kingdom of our God and of his Christ. Why church leaders are focused in escaping the earth and making it to heaven. The Bible is essentially not a book about heaven, but it is concerned and is not concerned with the geographical location of heaven, whether spiritual or physical. It is mainly concerned with the person of Christ and his rule, his dominion over the cosmos. Ephesians 1:9-11. And because of this, the Bible is the most practical book about life on earth that has ever been written. See, if you want to think more about God, know more about God, read the book of Psalms. But if you want to know how to operate on earth here, read Proverbs. Proverbs tells you how to make money, how not to make money, how to spend money. It tells you who to go with, who not to go with. It tells you how to conduct your business. It tells you how not to be a guarantor. It tells you all kinds of things that have to do with this life. I challenge people, if you want to be a wise man, read a chapter of Proverbs every day for 2 years. You'll be smarter than anybody. You'll be smarter. Your life will be governed by principles that runs this. That is why the richest people are not church people. A brother spoke to me. I invited him to lecture me about money. I said, I want to make a lot of money. And because he's a millionaire, and he came to my home, he said, Pastor, I will come to share. He said, I had the same desire, and I told my pastor, the kind of money I want to make is not in the church. He said, I cannot carry church mindset the way we run it now and make that kind of money. So he told himself, whatever I need to do, he laid down some absolutes. One, it must not exceed the government approved. If I'm doing contract, it must not exceed the government approved 30 to 35% markup. It must not go to BD, it must not take it. So he has never had any case with regards to money anywhere. But he is saying to the church, he told the pastor, he said, if the way you talk about riches, talk about rich people, talk against this, talk against that, if I carry that mindset, I will not have the kind of money I want to. I need to understand that I have values to add to this world. So part of the initial system during the Obasanjo era, part of the things they did in National Assembly, he set up the structure, he installed the system, he did everything. And the very first, he just told them, give me 10% of it. The very first 10% he made, after coming to Abuja with only 20,000, the first 10% he made in 4 weeks was 75 million. We'll talk about that some other day. Number 20. Kingdom leaders understand and embrace this reality. Church leaders emphasize 7, and since they have no real sense of purpose to give to the majority of their congregants who are called into full-time ministry, they just keep churning out full-time ministry. So let's go back now to the Matthew experience. Matthew, which he says, go and make disciples of the whole nations. What does he mean by that? Because, again, whenever we're talking, you see, we have a way, I think we suffer from this spiritual dyslexia. You know what that disease is? Is it a condition or whatever it is? That's the condition that make people learn backwards. That, if you say God, the person who has that challenge will see dog. They learn backwards. So if you want to tell him God, you have to write it like dog, then his brain will, is able to translate that. That's dyslexia. Richard Branson suffered from that. I think he's been out of it, but his principal told him when he was in school, he said, I'm predicting that you are either going to be a multi-millionaire or you will spend the rest of your life in jail. Because he sees everything the opposite side. And that made him become a genius in an aspect of life that other people, he will see things the way others don't see it. When he says, go to Matthew chapter 28, when he says, go into all the world and make disciples, that was the last time he was saying, I want you to run a concordance in your mind. In Matthew, he says, go make disciples. The first to be written actually among all the Gospels was Mark. And Luke got his materials from Mark, all right? So in Mark, he says, in Mark, he says, go and preach into all the world. In Luke, he says, wait for the power from on high. But when you see the way Matthew presents that, he says, make disciples of all nations. Now, when you go into the Great Commission as enunciated by Christ, when he was speaking to Paul, he says, feed my lamb first. When they come in, they're lambs. Then later I say, feed my sheep, feed my flock, feed my flock. In other words, at the point of their call, at the point he invited them to follow him, he said to them, follow me, I will what? So then we started ministries, go a fishing ministries. But I want you to go back and read the Gospels again, especially the end part of it. You know, when Jesus had resurrected, post-resurrection, pre-resurrection, as he was starting his ministry, he told them, come in, I want to recruit you as fishers of men. But post-resurrection, he did not refer to them as fishers of men. There was that transition from fishers to shepherds. The same Peter he told, follow me, I will make you fishers of men. Go fish for men. That same Peter was the one he told, feed my lamb, feed my sheep, feed my flock. Same Peter. In other words, he started out as fishermen, but it always ends as shepherds. If you understand this, it will change your concept of discipleship. When Jesus said to us, go and disciple the whole nation, he was invariably saying, you need to be patient with them until you turn. Because, let me quickly give you, you will get some of these teachings from my new book, the Life Coach. And then this one I'm talking about, I'm teaching now, you're going to get it from Defeating the Mother Frog Syndrome, Discipleship. I think that's the last chapter there. You're going to see that changing from fishermen to shepherds is the only way you can shepherd your community. It's the only way you can pastor. It's the only way you can see the Great Commission for what it truly is and disciple people so they can become disciples and apostles in the marketplace. Some of you are too intelligent to hold microphone. You need to engage these people out there. We have our philosophers in the church. The problem with us as pastors is that we do not create think tanks in our churches so that these guys can say, now the government is saying this. Can you draft a response? Let's draft our own white paper, our own response to this, and call a press conference and say, this is our position on so and so matter. And then your voice will be heard. But anyway, because I want to go a little far, I have just about 22 minutes more. Number one difference between a fisherman and a shepherd is the goal of a fisherman is to gather as much fish as he can. Whereas, and as quickly as he can. Whereas the shepherd has a long-time plan. The only plan that a fisherman has is the plan to gather his fish. That is why we do programs the way we do that, sir. Very often, I know churches that hold programs every month, some every other month, some every quarter. And the whole idea is just gather people. And we don't translate these people that have come now into disciples. And if they don't become disciples, then we are making converts, not disciples. And his instruction is not go make converts of the whole world. Is go and make disciples. And that is why I've done a little bit, because I've done church. I've pioneered so many churches and handed them over to pastors. I've done some surveys and I found out that an average community has, the churches in a community have been visited by sometimes 75% of all the people in that community. They visited one church or the other at one time or the other. Either Thanksgiving, child dedication, something, they've entered into one church just to visit. Some Nicodemously. They've come into church Nicodemously. You don't know them, but they just sneak in. And they've entered up to 70% sometimes of the people in the community have entered one church or the other. They say, I used to be a member of this. I've not been there for 30 years or for 20 years. Why is it then that they were able to come in and they were able to sneak out of our hands? Is simply because they did not become disciples. They were converts, not disciples. So we need to then begin to think of what the difference between a fisherman has short-term plan, just gather the crowd, bring them in, and then we populate our local assemblies and we do not think of how to then nurture them. Because the goal of a fisherman is not to nurture the fish, is to eat it or sell it. That's not the goal of a shepherd. So the approach is different. Number two, the fisherman has no particular relationship with the fish. You know that. The only thing the fisherman wants is the fish and what it means to him. Whereas the shepherd, on the other hand, had knowledge of his sheep. He knows them by name. He calls them by name. And in fact, that is where real growth takes place, when we can relate to the people. That's when we know them, when we know what they're going through. Do you know there's something called discipleship evangelism? That you target a family and you are discipling them, you visit with them, you preach to them, you don't even preach, you just help them, support them, and visit with them and pray. Mama Choma, I hope you people are okay. Just to say hello, and you are not saying anything about the gospel. Just showing them the love of Christ. Just showing them you are a believer, which is the minimum. And just visiting with them, and then after 6 months and 8 months and all, they just say, if they're having a little problem, let's call brother out. They will call you there. You keep resolving. Until such a time, they say, look, I think I like your church. I'll go with you. It takes a long while to get there, but when they come in, they are disciples, because you'll be sharing with them, not inviting them to your church at all, just teaching them the word, just praying with them. Discipleship evangelism. You know, I have a couple of goats somewhere in one village. I think about 20-something of them now. The guy who keeps the goat, you know, I told him one day, do you have some male goats around there? He said, yeah, I have about 3 that is grown up. I said, can you take one and offer it as a burnt offering to the Lord? Just kill it and bring that. He said, He said, Pastor, I can't kill the goat. I said, why? This is a village man. He said to me, well, okay, sorry, I forgot that. He said, do you know that I call that goat by name? I call all of them by name. I gave this one Abuja, I gave this one Brazil, I gave this one. He said, I call them by name and they come. He said, not sheep, goat. He said, now this morning, I called this goat and the goat came. And I tied him and brought him to you. How can I kill this goat that I call by name? He said, it's a task I can't accomplish. No fisherman has such compassion for any fish. Whether it's bunga fish or shinos or catfish, there is no compassion. Number 3, the fish runs from the fisherman as soon as they hear his voice. He has to use baits, deceptive nets, to drag them in. Jesus says, John 10:3, my sheep hear my voice. They know me, I know me, and they come. That's the difference. If you were used to making sound to them, now I own those goats. They're in that village. When I get to that place, they don't come close to me. But when that man comes and just say, Brazil, all of them, they hear the voice, they all come around. Now, even though I own them, they don't respond to me, because the aim of this man is probably just to eat them or sell them or whatever. But the guy who is taking care of them has become their shepherd, and they have mutual respect for each other. It's not the same thing with fishermen. There's no fisherman that has fellowship with his fish. Number 4, a shepherd will leave the 99 to go after the missing one, while a fisherman goes everywhere to look for new fish. So that if for any reason he's dragging them out and some of them slip out, he say, no problem, I'll catch you another day. He will go to where there's fish. And that's why we give up on each other too quickly. We give up on each other too quickly. We give up on people who say, well, I don't know what's happening. He's no longer serious with the things of God. And you just left him. Or you say, something like this happened in his life. Okay, you cannot afford to give up, because if God hasn't given up on you, you cannot, as a shepherd, give up on your sheep. He had to leave 99. But a fisherman will leave 5 that is missing and go to elsewhere to look for another one. Do you see the differences between? So that if we don't change our strategy and transform, and that's why you say in our church, we thank God for some fish that God has given to us. We have some big fish That is why they are milking the people. You don't think about the welfare of the people. If you see them as fish from which you can, whose mouth you can just open and pick money, then you are not going to be concerned about their well-being. Is anybody in church? Number 5, a fisherman is more interested in numbers and not the lives of the fish, while the shepherd is more concerned about the welfare of his sheep. A shepherd will lay down his life for his sheep, while the fish gives his life for the fisherman. And this, of course, is the reason why many fish are poor in the congregation and the man of God is wealthy. The fisherman is riding on the best cars, living in the best houses, and there's no empowerment on the people. Number 6, the fisherman baits his fish while the shepherd feeds his flock. And this is a major contrast between the two approaches, because to keep a fisherman's mindset without transitioning into shepherds leaves us with constantly bothering the people, baiting the people. You know, I can't mention names, but one of the big names in this nation that you have heard about, build auditorium, they do this and all that. A young pastor went to him and said, "Sir, I look up to you and all that. What do I do to keep it?" He said, "You have to keep rejecting the people one program or the other. Let them know they have some challenges and they need to come for prayers." He said, you must keep them looking up to this place and keep them coming. He said, that's the only way you can control them. And then the guy too came, he said to me, "Sir, I look up to this man in ministry. So all that he does," I said, "the Lord has asked us to go for 31 days program. And the Lord asked us to," so the whole idea is just to keep controlling the people so they don't leave. A shepherd grows the pasture through the word, through worship, through prayers and fellowship. These are the 4 indices of a lively church: prayer, the word, fellowship, and worship. And I say to pastors, if you can develop yourself in these areas, let your church have good worship and be able to pray, and then fellowship, so that after the meeting, the people are just not rushing away. We spend time to shake each other, greet each other, hug each other, and care about each other. If there's the word, if there's prayer, if there's worship, if there's fellowship, anybody will come, because these are the 4 things we're looking for. Number, what is it? Number 7. Is that number 7? Yeah, number 7. A fisherman gets fish daily, but keeps none for future reproduction, while the shepherd keeps his sheep purposefully. The motive of the fisherman is to catch and sell and share. To catch, sell, eat, or share. His plan for the future is to target the right spot in the river and the best fishing communities around. He buys nets, he repairs the old ones, he sets programs and activities to catch more fish. And then imagine churches and ministries that are running like that. Just programmed to catch more fish. But the goal of the shepherd is to tend his flock for future growth and expansion. His mission is to see his sheepfold healthy and growing by reproduction of each sheep within the fold. And this is the problem. A fisherman does not think, look, if this program is not working, we import the one that is working in that other church. But a shepherd is looking at, what can we do with those who are already here? Some of the things I have thought about, sir, in my pastoral years, one of the things I tried to do, I didn't do it successfully. I've not done anything perfect in my life. I just keep doing the best I could in the circumstance. But when people are too long in a local assembly, they give you problems. Because there's something called spiritual hangover, information overload. My job is to help you discover your ministry and then fulfill your ministry so that you are not struggling for microphone. They didn't allow me to lead prayer. They didn't call me to do that. If everybody is engaged in what God has given to them, less and less people will be interested in coming forward. If it's all about occupying till I come and my job is to shepherd the people, let me give you an idea. Those of you who have singing ministry, imagine one or two of you decide, or three of you decide to team together and start. This is Rumo Kuta. Okay, Rumo Kuta Gospel Choir. Those of you who are in Rumola, you decide to start Rumola Gospel Choir. And then this other one. And then in December, we now want to have concert. And we're going to have competition between the choirs. Do you know that if you visit all these churches here and gather some of these youths that are running up and down, do you know that you can have a 100-man choir in Rumukuta here? That will be your ministry outside of this local assembly. Sir, I have a documentary on how the English Football Premiership League started. They were all Sunday school programs. They were started by Baptist and Methodist reverends because they didn't want their children to go into alcohol when the parents were going into digging coal mines and all that. And they didn't want the children to run up and down. So they started something. They said, okay, let's start soccer. They started. So this so and so Baptist. In fact, I think Chelsea or something was started by, is that Chelsea or one of these, England football club, was started by the pastor who took over from Charles Spurgeon. He started that club. And of all those English premiership, Man City was started by a woman. The one they call Red Devils now were Red Angels. The other one was Blue Angels. Now they changed them from Blue Angels to Blue Demons. I mean, is it demons they call it? Sorry. But they've changed all of them now, Red Devils and all. And these were church programs that the church started in order to engage the youths. Do you know the reason why the Premiership League, now I'm not a football fan, but I know this history. Do you know the reason why they start football match 3 o'clock? It is the hour of prayer. The 4 watches, that is 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12, and 3 p.m. So they will pray. So they decided that, okay, let's do a healthy competition among the youths in all these football clubs. And then they put them together, and during that time, they fixed it during the hour of prayer. So when they finish praying, they will start their league. That's how the English league started. Now, some of you here, you know all the names and coaches of all the English football, whatever. Do you know you can start an area football club here? This man that died in Lagos the other day, he has 2 football clubs. My people football club, number 1, team 1, team 2. There was a particular year that 5 of his players played for Nigeria under 20. 5 from his club. The highest goal scorer, our goalkeeper, and then the MVP. All of them came from one team. Who told you that with your interest in football, you cannot go out there and start a football club in this area? In fact, I have a friend who is using that in Abuja today. His ministry is teaching churches, teaching different organizations how to recruit the youths and preach the gospel through football clubs. He does that in Abuja today. Pastor Hillary. That's what he does. And they take him out to South Africa, take him to the US, and they coach him. He had videos and all that he gave me, and showing me how to start a football club. What if you start a football club and through there you preach to people? You can mentor those youths. You can start, I talk about gospel choir for this area. Do you know that you can start, even, you can start, your name is Patrick, you call it Pato's gang. Your name is Mike, you say Mike's gang. And you start your gang in this area, and the gang is brainstorming how to transform this area. Patu told me he started Pato's gang now. Patito's gang. Don't you see the ideas they discussed there? Why don't you start your own gang here? Why do you allow Egbesu and Eye to be the ones running route? You can start your own gang, transforming lives of young people. Number, what are we now? I still have a few minutes more, so let me quickly give you. Number 8 or number 9? Number 8. The fisherman has no rest. The fisherman has to go from one river to another river, one river to another river, just looking for whatever. But the shepherd who takes care of his sheep, who teaches them, who nurtures them, enters into rest because the sheep will multiply and produce by themselves. The mission of a fisherman is to go from day to day and from trip to trip and from fishing spot to fishing spot in order to make daily supply and sustenance. And think of churches who run that way. Meanwhile, God wants us to be able to go beyond that and enter into a point where, there's this guy who has, in Delta State, one bishop, Akotozo, himself and some 3 other bishops in that community are now the ones that make decisions for the community. They choose the president. They call it president. There is no chief there or king. So they choose the president of that community. And his term is renewable. Because these people have shaken the community, they fed the community every year. These bishops will come together, they will pull resources together, buy cow, buy this, and they will cook for all the community to come and eat and preach the gospel to them. So they are the ones that used to choose the leaders of the community. If you don't have impeccable record of service and the fear of God and the love of the people, they will not select you. And so the final selection committee are the bishops, are the pastors. So they are the principalities of that community. They are the ones that lead the people, that lead the people even today. They are the ones selecting. You can become a kingmaker when you transit from the mindset you have now into saying, let me shepherd this community. Let me show them the light. Because now you are going to shine better. Do you know that if everybody is in darkness and you are the only one that has light, it will be the brightest? Your light may not be the brightest among us now. But if you get out there, it will still be the brightest light in that darkness. Number 9, a shepherd, a fisherman uses fire to roast his fish so they don't get rotten. A shepherd will use fire to warm his sheep in winter. You see the different uses. And if we understand, the other one uses rod. That's another point there. He raises his voice. The shepherd will raise his voice to call his sheep. This other one hides his voice. That's why a lot of people can't preach certain things. Because if they preach it, the people will go. But a real shepherd will raise his voice to bring the people in, and he uses his rod to what? To correct them. The other one uses his rod to catch the fish. If you see, our evangelistic approach, sir, is so defected that the people are now seeing us as deceivers. Because we go to them, we say, come to church, God is going to do this for you, He's going to do that for you, and all that. But the Jesus, that thing you were talking about, that verse, when you reduce something, when you discount a product, it does not reduce its value.